Good Tuesday, everybody. Welcome to This Week in Women's Soccer. I'm your host, Jeff Kassouf. You've probably seen me at equalizersoccer.com or si.com, but if you haven't, hopefully I can make a good first impression. Definitely excited about this show. We're going to be doing this each week on North American Soccer Network, and hopefully you can join us each week. We'll have some analysis, player interviews, and all the latest chatter. We'll take some of your opinions. You can email us. You can let us know what you're thinking. Maybe you don't agree, maybe you do. But we'd certainly love to hear from you. So exciting first show. It's obviously a great time to be talking women's soccer because at least, regionally we've got the CONCACAF Women's Olympic qualifiers going on, and seems to be a lot of people talking about them, and maybe not necessarily for the best reasons. Certainly not because of competitive games, we can say that. So we'll be getting to that pretty much right away here. And then we've also got a very special guest. We're excited to have U.S. Women's National Team midfielder Heather O'Reilly on the show today. We caught up with her a little bit earlier, and we will play that interview for you on the second segment of this show. Obviously, Heather and the U.S. are in Vancouver with Olympic qualifying, and they've had some pretty easy games so far here. A 14-0 win over the Dominican Republic, a 13-0 win over Guatemala. And it's not only the U.S., there's kind of a bigger picture here. To give you the aggregate score of these games, 59-1 so far through 6 games here. Through 5 days of play, through 10 games. And, a late Costa Rica goal last night is salvaged this from going, the shutout streak from continuing. It was the first time that 2 teams have scored in a game. Some really lopsided numbers that we're getting here. And I know that it's sparked some debate on a lot of different angles. A lot of people thinking that the Americans kind of ran up the score, that, there's some folks who thought that Pearson Haga was celebrating too much at, 12, 13, 14-0. I think that there's bigger issues than wondering of, it was the score run up. 59-1, you still have, beyond the Americans, you've got the Canadians cruising to victory. You've got Mexico even cruising to victory. And I think it really stood out on Monday night when Canada just really, they took their foot off the gas at the end of the game, and it could have been a lot worse. Really kind of bulldozed Costa Rica. There's no other way to put it. Costa Rica is supposed to be kind of far and away the 4th best team in CONCACAF, and showed that, at least on that night, we'll see what happens in the semifinals, whoever they draw, but they couldn't even handle Canada at all. So a lot of bad mistakes there, but I think it brings up the question, what do you do with qualifying? Because, a lot of people have said, you need to break this into a smaller group, 4 teams, 6 teams. You need to kind of weed out Cuba and Haiti and Dominican Republic and even Guatemala. But, I think I have to agree with that. I think you got to do it right, though. And I understand that there's a lot of really sort of heartwarming stories, a lot of good stories that come out of this. The Cuba team had, they had dinner donated last night before they left, and they had the time of their lives. For Haiti, obviously with everything that's gone on there, there's a lot of sort of sentimental value in this, and there's a lot of life experience, a lot of even soccer experience, but I don't think that losing a game 14-0, 13-0, even some of these 6-0 results where it could have been a lot worse, necessarily helps these teams. There needs to be a system where they're getting that valuable experience and they're learning these lessons. But when you lose a game like that and you have 20% of the ball, 20% of possession over 90 minutes, what have you learned? I think if anything, some of these players might be so discouraged after that. Who knows? Maybe they walk away. I don't think that that's an impossible or crazy assumption, because it's very just degrading almost, and it's not the fault of anyone scoring the goals. I don't think. If you're a player trying to qualify for the Olympics, and I think Heather will touch on this in the interview a bit. Um, you're not going to let your foot off the gas. This is a shot at the Olympics, and maybe they didn't need 14, maybe they didn't need 13, but the fact is that it happened, and the disparity there is huge. There's a huge gap between these teams, and it's we're talking about the top and sort of even the middle of teams in this world when you talk about like a Costa Rica, which is certainly not a bottom feeder by any means. So, I mean, to me, what I think you need to do, I think you need to look at the men's side. You have the hexagonal stage for World Cup qualifying, and I know that the men sort of also um, shorten the Olympic qualifying. It's not as serious as the World Cup qualifying, but look at the men's side, and you take that and you sort of apply it to the women's game. Right now, I think you have to say you give the bye into that final qualifying round to Mexico, U.S., Canada, and we're doing that anyway, this being the final stage. You have your preliminaries in the Caribbean, in Central America, and that's where you let these teams get experience. Let Haiti, the Dominican Republic, Guatemala, let all these teams play each other. They get valuable experience in what it means to win a tight game, to go on the road and win a tight game against similar opposition, and they get sort of battle tested for the next round. And maybe they're not being battle tested in the sense of they're playing, superpower US or Canada, but they're getting valuable experience. And I can assure you that, a 2-2 draw on the road is going to be far more valuable to a team like, Guatemala than just getting trounced on by the U.S. So I think that's where you really need to go with this. And I think that solves sort of a lot of problems with qualifying. You've got, for one, you kind of eliminate, at least you hope you eliminate a lot of these blowouts. At the very least, maybe that fourth team is kind of getting beat up on a little bit, whoever comes in. But, I think with a proper preliminary qualifying, you won't have that. So I think you solve that problem. I think you also solve a pretty big problem of growing interest in the women's game. And where I would see this working out is if you have this preliminary qualifying, you get these teams some good games, and then you go to this Final Four stage where you have a home and away series with all of them. So now all of a sudden you've just got each team's getting 3 home games. So we'll take Canada, for example. I think Canada's done well supporting their team in terms of showing up to BC Place in this tournament, but you're asking for these Canadian fans to come out to, in the span of 11 days, there's 15 games in the same stadium. And some of them, like last night, I mean, Haiti played Cuba. How interested are they? Not that much, I guess. But, you're still asking them to come out to 15 games in 11 days. And even their own Canadian team, we're going to assume they make the final, 5 games in 15 days. It's a lot to ask. I mean, it's a lot on the wallet. It's a lot just mentally. I mean, driving out, it's same stadium, fans. There's some people who do it. There's diehards. But, I mean, they're not just going to show up like that every 2 days. So I think that you solve that problem in the sense that now you're saying, hey, you get 3 games, high stakes. It's for all the marbles. You can use this for World Cup qualifying. You can use it for Olympic qualifying. And you say, you got 3 games here. U.S. comes to town. Mexico comes to town. Maybe Costa Rica comes to town over the course of 1, 2, 3 months, however long it needs to take. And you build up, you market these games. You build it up. And now you can get fans out there. You've got a home field advantage. And, now you're driving interest. You are solving the problem of sort of these lopsided games that aren't doing anything for anyone, if we're being quite honest. And I think that, those 2 things combined in particular really would help sort of grow the women's game, particularly in this region. You look at the men's side, and we talk about the U.S. men really struggling to go down to Mexico and get any type of a result. And some of that's mental now because we remind them of that every time they go to Mexico. But, there's something to be said about that. It's a home field advantage down there. When the U.S. women or Canada women or Costa Rica women go to Mexico, they're going to get a hard time. And, maybe some things will happen like we hear on the men's side. I think it was a couple of years back in an interview, it might have been Landon Donovan talking about, the Mexican fans found out what hotel they were staying in, and they were calling them at 4 a.m. in the morning, calling their rooms to wake them up and just kind of disrupt their sleep. Things like that. I mean, I'm not saying I advocate those, but uh, they kind of add to sort of the battle testing, the competitiveness really, and the home field advantage. So I think that's something that you could really get out of that. And I think that when you talk about extending preliminary qualifying and then going to sort of a home and away like that, some of the argument might be money. I mean, some of these federations, we all know from watching. The Haitian team needed to have a second set of jerseys donated to them. There's not a lot of money in these confederations. That's completely understood. But I think when you look at the cost, I mean, how much does it cost really? And the answer is certainly a lot to fly a team out to Vancouver for a week or 2 weeks, whatever it might be, and stay there, from a Cuba or something. I mean, that's a very long way. I think it's a huge expense. And I'm not saying it would not be a huge expense to extend qualifying, but I think, if you can do it one way, I think you can do it the same way, apply that same money in a different way. So, I would much rather like to see Guatemala and El Salvador playing 3 times instead of Guatemala getting trounced once by the U.S. and going back home. And I would much rather see 2 teams that we didn't see that we saw in 2008 qualifying for the Olympics when this was 2 groups of 3 instead of 2 groups of 4, and things were notably a little more competitive. There were some blowouts, but there was nothing as bad as this. I think if you take those and you look at them, you had Jamaica and Trinidad and Tobago in there. 2 of the sort of better teams on that second tier of teams in CONCACAF. Let those 2 teams duke it out. Let them play a home and away. Let them play in a long group stage and really sort of build up some confidence and momentum. And then they come in. And, maybe you want your hexagonal as, I'm just calling it a hexagonal. Obviously, it's not one in the traditional sense, but, maybe you have it 4 teams, maybe it's 6 teams. But you have that home and away, and you kind of, you're able to market these games. You're able to kind of let teams build, give them a home field advantage, and I think that it would certainly solve some problems. So we'll see. Talking about that a little bit with Heather coming up, Heather O'Reilly, of course, from the U.S. Women's National Team. She joined us earlier today, so we'll talk to her, and we'll keep on talking about Olympic qualifying. Obviously, tonight, U.S.-Mexico is the big one, sort of the first one that actually really means anything to the U.S., if we're being completely honest. And then semifinals come up Friday, and that is make or break. Win the semis, and you're into the Olympics in London. So a lot to get to coming up. Heather O'Reilly after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back, everyone. We're here with our very first guest on This Week in Women's Soccer, the one and only Heather O'Reilly, joining us from Vancouver, where the U.S. is obviously attempting to qualify for the Olympics. They are already in the semifinals. You need to figure out who they're playing, but they've got there by way of some thrashings of a couple teams, 14-0 over the Dominican Republic and 13-0 over Guatemala on Sunday. And here's what Heather had to say a little bit earlier. To me, it seemed like no matter what the score was, there was really no let-off, and there was really kind of a determination to not stop. How do you not get complacent in these games? I know that obviously the will to win, but at some point, when it's 12-0 or so, that doesn't kick in at all?
Well, I think if it was a friendly match or something like that, I think that maybe, the scoreline might have been a different story. But I think that we have to remember what happened last qualifier, and that was that we actually wound up not qualifying and not going through the tournament, and then we had to play the playoff, as you probably remember, against Italy. And I think that that's fresh in our minds, and I think that translated to the field the last 2 games. I think that we've kept an extremely good discipline offensively and defensively, and put away a lot of chances. And I think that confidence and those good habits will be continued into this Mexico game and hopefully through the semifinal. So I think that is what it speaks to is a desire to keep good habits and stay disciplined and just take a very business-like approach through these qualifications because obviously this is a very serious tournament.
Mm-hmm. And obviously, I mean, you talked about Mexico coming up on Tuesday now, and that game that kind of sits in the back of your mind from World Cup qualifying. Is that much more motivation? Obviously, qualifying for the Olympics is huge motivation, but the fact that they knocked you guys out and you had to go to the playoff in 2010?
Oh, absolutely. I think obviously our main focus is to get to London, and whoever's sort of in the way of that is our focus. But the fact of the matter is Mexico's a team that kept us out of it, and kind of put us through that scare in late 2010. So yeah, I think that we feel like we want to put together a very good game against them and not let that happen again.
Mm-hmm. And 2 of your teammates in these past couple games, Amy Rodriguez, Sydney Leroux, tying records. Can you talk about those 2 a little bit, getting 5 goals apiece?
Yeah, I mean, 5 goals. I mean, that's just unbelievable. I was pretty pumped to having a hat trick, and Amy had to 2-up me, I guess, the other day. So I was giving her a hard time about that. But it's really just good for it's good for confidence. Obviously, everybody feels good about putting the ball in the back of the net sometimes, and for Sid Leroux to be very nervous. I think it was her second cap, and for her to slam home 5 goals. What a start to her women's national team career. So, I think at the same time, nobody is making a bigger deal of it than it is. I think it is what it is. And I think that, the best thing that'll come from it is that, A-Rod and Sid will have tremendous confidence around the box, and they obviously had a lot of looks on goal recently, and I think that, in important moments, that'll help them.
Mm-hmm. And just on a slightly sadder note, obviously, the news that came through about Ali Krieger and the torn ACL, MCL. I guess for you, I mean, playing on that right flank with her, is it an adjustment to sort of get used to someone else being behind you after she's been there, so consistently in 2011?
Yeah, I mean, the whole team was so devastated about Ali. She's a big part of the team on the field and off, and I said it's not too big of an adjustment, to be honest, because players like Heather Mitts have been in that role for years, and we train so much together, and every training session we're working alongside each other. It would be Allie and I in a scrimmage or Heather and I in a scrimmage. And so we've had a lot of opportunities to play together. Pete does a good job about mixing up all the teams on the training field. So I don't think that it's going to be that much of an adjustment, to be honest. And Heather's ready for the job.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And on the WPS side, obviously you just recently signed with the Boston Breakers. I know that, kind of personally for you, your husband's there, and you have some very good friends on the team. Can you talk about that decision? Was it an easy one for you personally?
No, I don't think that it was an easy one at all. I think that it definitely made a lot of sense for me to go to Boston, and just, as a logistical standpoint from, my husband is going to Harvard Business School currently, and we live up there in Cambridge, literally across the street from the stadium. So it just made a lot of sense logistically. I think that I just made it past Kim Kardashian's 72 days of marriage, and I'm hoping to continue that streak. So I think living in the same city as my husband in our first year of marriage is an important thing, and will hopefully help me in that feat. But it wasn't an easy decision at all because, I've been with Sky Blue from the beginning, and that club is special to me, and that fan base is special to me. I love playing on your sack field, and New Jersey soccer has made me the player that I am. So, there was definitely some sad feelings for sure. But I think at the end of the day, it's good for my, kind of personal life, and it also adds to it that Boston has such a reputable club. They've also been around for a long time and has some world-class players on their team. I'm very excited to play with Kelly Smith. I think that we played together in New Jersey back in the day, maybe 10 years ago, but haven't played together since, and I'm really looking forward to the opportunity to play with Kelly again. She's one of the best there is.
Mm-hmm. So, now in Boston, you mentioned your New Jersey roots. I saw you tweet on Sunday about a Pats-Giants final. So I'm wondering, which way do you have to go in the Super Bowl?
Yeah, I can't believe that it's my two cities in the Super Bowl. I was laughing with the girls that it's my past and my future playing against each other. But of course, I'll be rooting for the Giants. I can't be a traitor that quick. Yeah, I'm still hanging true to most of the New York sports teams, especially the Yankees. Definitely can't be.
Oh man.
Swapping that loyalty. So Boston's a really cool city, though. Great sports city. I'm excited to sort of experience that, but it definitely pulls at the heartstrings. Having to cheer for Boston sports sometimes.
So this is going to be an adjustment for you, a Yankees fan in Boston.
Yeah, definitely. I've already been to a Boston Yankees game up there at Fenway, and I tried to be a little bit discreet with my Yankee support, but I don't think I was too successful with that. I got some evil looks.
Okay. So, all right, Mexico Tuesday. Real quickly, I guess. What's kind of the scouting report for them?
Yeah, we talked about them today. That's sort of the rhythm that we've been in this week. We play the match, and the next day we wake up and we have a training session and we have a pregame meeting, scouting report. So we've talked about Mexico a little bit. I think, the important keys for us are just to keep the ball moving, sort of exploit when they get a little pulled out of their back line. I think the players that we're definitely aware of are, Maribel Dominguez up top, number 9, very fast player. She's been around for them for years. And, of course, Teresa Nayola, Stanford grad that a lot of my teammates are very familiar with in the midfield. So I think that those are sort of the two players that we know quite a bit about. But again, I think that it's mostly about us just knocking the ball around the way that we have the last 2 games, and just keeping our quick speed of play up, and hopefully finishing some chances like we obviously have in the last 2 games.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, the U.S. women final group game against Mexico at 10:30 on Tuesday. Looking to figure out who they're playing in the semifinals. Already clinched. Heather O'Reilly, thanks for taking the time to join us on the show today.
Thank you.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Thanks for staying with us. Thanks again to Heather O'Reilly for taking the time out to give us a ring from Vancouver. Again, U.S. women taking on Mexico tonight at 10:30 p.m. Eastern. Very important game for the U.S. because a win means they avoid Canada, and I think that the way Canada has been playing, you absolutely want to do that. And I think Canada would be happy to see that too, because that means if these two teams have to match up in the semis for whatever reason, that means one of 2 of them is not going to the Olympics. And we've seen some shocking things. Germany's not going to the Olympics, but that's a product of something else entirely. But still, it'd be pretty shocking to see that. So got to take care of business. A draw will get the U.S. Top the group and facing Costa Rica, which I think should not be much of a problem for them. Canada really handled Costa Rica. I think, unfortunately, Costa Rica is still not at that level. Most most obviously, I would say, is in the back. I think that there's a lot of suspects play in the back, and obviously, um, not having a number one goalkeeper is a problem as well, which we saw last night on just a real mess of an own goal. I mean, Juliet Arias play. I feel bad. I mean, it's a little bit comical, but I mean, the ball gets played back to her. For starters, you don't play the ball back to your keeper inside of the post because things like this happen. If it goes under a foot outside the post, well, you just gave up a corner kick. And then Arias tries to trap it with the sole of her foot. Real mess. It goes under her foot. It's an own goal. And I mean, that really sort of summed things up for the evening. So Costa Rica's not really at that level. U.S. will be pretty happy to face them, even if they won't tell you that. So, and I think they will tell you that. Really, I'm going to be honest. So, USA Mexico tonight in the more consolation game at 8 o'clock Eastern. You've got Guatemala, Dominican Republic, and then the semis. If the U.S. wins Group B, they'll play at 8 p.m. Friday. And then the second game is at 11 p.m. Friday from BC Place, 11 p.m. Eastern, that is. So, lot to get figured out tonight. And before we wrap things up, just want to touch on WPS real quickly because it'd be crazy to have a first show and not touch on that. A lot going on, sort of a little bit older news, so I won't bore you with that. Obviously, Sid LaRue went first in the draft to the Atlanta Beat. Sidney LaRue scoring 5 goals the other night against Guatemala, so I think Atlanta's very happy with that. And then the ongoing sort of Magic Jack drama. So a lot of you can get caught up on that on equalizersoccer.com, amongst many other places. ESPNW's had some great coverage, all white kit. So, check that out. Who knows what's going to happen? I mean, as of right now, Magic Jack's set to play some exhibition games, assuming that everything gets worked out. I think Bodor keeps making the important point that the lawsuit is not gone; it's just temporarily suspended. So, who knows what could happen? Unfortunately, because there's, that's just a never-ending saga between WPS and Magic Jack. So, we'll see what happens there. Hopefully we'll have something to talk about besides that very soon. I certainly hope so. I mean, everyone I talk to, when I say, they want to talk WPS, or maybe they don't even want to talk about it, I bring it up. For some reason, everyone knows about this drama. They say any press is good press. Well, WPS needs to back off of that statement because that's not the case right now. So we'll get to that. If anything, big and important comes up next week, we'll certainly get to that. But otherwise, the most important thing right now is obviously CONCACAF Olympic qualifying. Will anyone besides the U.S. and Canada get through is the big question. So that answer will probably at least start to come tonight, because if the U.S. avoids Canada, then I think, we've got pretty much what we expected. If not, could be very, very interesting. So we'll see about that, folks. Once again, want to thank you. Very excited to have the show. We'll keep you updated throughout the week on next week's guests. And thanks again for joining us on This Week in Women's Soccer. We'll be coming to you every Tuesday. I'm your host, Jeff Kassouf. Catch you later.